interrogate, to question, to interact, and in fact get answers for questions they may be having for persons interested in occupying the highest office in the land. And that being the case, we have taken upon ourselves, the media in the Gambia, to conduct these debates. You will understand that all of the media houses participate in these debates with us here live and beaming across the world. And I'd like to say thank you to the partners who have joined us from day one and are still with us. Gambia Music Store, iAfrica TV, Kir Fatu, Fatu Network, Voice Out Digital, Gambia Talent Promotions, Star TV, amongst a plethora of media houses that always join us here. So it's always a pleasure to do this. But also for the first time in our history, we are witnessing history in the making ourselves. We have up to 6 or 7 independent candidates vying for the office of the president. Equally, we have 18 registered political parties. So the debate today is centered on the independent candidates. We have received word from the camp of Esa Mbaifal that they will not be able to participate tonight, which we accept, and they expressed it a few days ago. Marisok also has been contacted, and she's up country engaging women folk and doing political activity, according to her. Amadou Kante, Dr. Amadou Kante also has been approached and communicated to. He also said he's not going to be able to make it. Banki had accepted to participate, but pulled the plug this afternoon from us to say he is not prepared because he has not been informed adequately about the topic and doesn't even know the location. All of those accepted. Our gratitude goes to you gentlemen, from Mr. Tamsir Jase in the United States, to Kitabu Fati, to Alaji Mamadi Kurang, and to Babukar Jeng. The 4 of you participating in the debate here with us today live. Now, we had agreed amongst ourselves that we will take 5 minutes to introduce each of us and our programs of activity as pertains to our first 100 days in office, what economic decisions we're going to make, and which such reforms that we are also going to conduct. And all the 4 gentlemen here have each participant has up to 3 times to borrow 2 extra minutes to conclude a point. This, gentlemen, I believe, is what we had agreed. To set the ball rolling, we will start with you, Mr. Tamsir Jase in the United States. Your first 5 minutes begins now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Drame. I would like to use this opportunity to pay my respect to you, Mr. Drame. I would extend the same respect to my wife, Mrs. Hadiba Jan Jase, members of my executive, and supporters of Homeland Security, as well as to my colleagues that are with me on this platform today, and also to my fellow citizens. My name is Tamsir Jase, born in Banjul. In my work experience, I serve in the United States Navy. I'm a veteran of Operation Desert Storm. In the Gambia, I served as the first Gambian police advisor and subsequently became the Deputy Inspector General of Police. I then served as Director General of the Gambia Immigration Department before getting into Mile 2 as a result of my alleged involvement in the 2006 coup d'etat involving Mr. Ndur Cham. After that, I came back to the United States after the Reverend Jesse Jackson negotiated my release, along with another colleague. And I came back to the Gambia and served as a consultant on the United Nations Development Program to prepare a community policing strategy and implementation plan for the Gambia Police Force, as well as consultancy on the formulation of institutional policies for both the Gambia Police Force and the Gambia Immigration Department. In my educational career, I have a master's degree in terrorism and homeland security, a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I hold a postgraduate certificate in public administration, as well as a second postgraduate certificate in justice studies. I am very familiar with the security sector reforms that have stalled in the Gambia. And I think it is time that this matter be resurrected and the Gambia move on. At this point, Mr. Drame, I want to know whether you want me to go directly into my 100 days or it was just an opportunity to introduce myself and allow my colleagues to do the same.
Please, sir, go ahead with your first 100 days, please.
All right. In order to, you see, back in 2016, the Gambian people voted for change. But this change actually have never happened. In fact, the Gambian condition has deteriorated to such a point that we need to press the reset button. To do so, we need to usher in a new government, a government that would take the reforms seriously that the Barrow government has failed to do. So for the top 100 days of my office, I would like to lay the foundation of explaining that prior to this, 3 months ago, we have started preparing ourselves for our first 100 days in office. And we did this by actually identifying the areas in which reforms are required and came to the realization that every sector in the Gambia needs to be reformed. But we are of the opinion that 50% of Gambia's strength is in the Gambia, the other 50% is outside of the Gambia. Now, we need a president who would understand this and build that bridge between the 50% at home and the 50% in the diaspora to make a strong Gambia. So what we have decided to do is that instead of bothering the Gambian people with a manifesto that people never read and parties never follow, we would just focus on a reform agenda. And the first 100 days, we would constitute a panel, a committee of Gambian experts who would actually put out a reform request from all Gambians, from all walks of life, to send in their executive summaries of their reform programs so that they would be included into the package of a national reform agenda. Once this is done, these individuals would be invited to come in and actually give a presentation of their proposed reform in the particular sector that they have the expertise. The idea is to identify a team for each sector that would actually prepare a reform agenda for the Gambian people. Say there would be one for the agricultural sector, one for the economic sector, security, health, and so on and so forth. A collection of all of these reform packages is what we would call our national strategic direction. This is what we would put forward to the Gambian people so that they would hold our government accountable. Now, once that is done, we have also identified the 100 strategic positions in the Gambia that actually are the foundation of any economic development. So we have decided that once I am inaugurated, within 72 hours of taking office, every permanent secretary and deputy permanent secretary, every head of department and deputy, and every parastatal and deputy, the ambassadors and their deputies will all send in their CVs and a description of their credentials so that this committee would go ahead and review all of these documents to ensure that people holding these positions are qualified to do so. And this would be an independent, competent body that would give recommendation as to who stays in office and who doesn't. So what we do is, once, for instance, they identify that Mr. X at this particular department matches the skills that are required and the experience that is required.
One more minute, Mr. Jase. One more minute.
They will be given, once they identify someone qualified to hold the position, that person remains. The other person, the other people that may not qualify to hold their offices will be redeployed. This is important so that we will not continue to have round pegs in square holes and square pegs in round holes. This would give opportunity to Gambian people to apply for these jobs should they become qualified and actually open the job market to this strategic position for the right people to do the job for the Gambian people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jase. It's been great. We've got the ball rolling. So we'll go to you now, Mr. Kitabu Fati. Your first 100 days, you have 5 minutes on the economic plan and reforms that you may do. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. I think I have to stand because I'm a short guy. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, our able host, Mr. Drame, and my fellow candidates and the media house present here. My name is Kitabu Fati, born and raised in the Gambia. I do comedy as a profession. If you look deeper into comedy, we are more of civic educators. So I think that's a brief introduction about me. I've joined the race to contest for election this year because I know this country very well and I love this country dearly. I've slept where the poorest of the poor slept in this country. I have eaten what the poorest of the poor eat in this country. So I believe it's not only going to be about education, but it's going to be about knowledge about the people to be able to rule this country. So our first 100 days in office, Gambia suffers a hard deal of corruption and mismanagement. I believe to put things in the rightful place, what we need is a situation analysis. We need assessment. We need to know what is in that office before we set the ball rolling. Because in 2016, we've all seen it here, the coalition came together with lots of plans, and the implementation was a problem. Because why? When they went into the office, the first thing they said was there was no money in the coffers. So I believe before we have to set up ideas, set up things, we need to know what is the problem. We need to identify the problems, our strengths, our faults, to be able to do a better planning for this country. Then the PDP government, if we are elected into office, the first thing we'll do, we'll set up a committee, a fraud committee. Like I said before, corruption is the problem of this nation. And if, like, one thing should change in our government, like the Mandinka said, that is a problem in this country. If a person who is entrusted a place to run the place for the country believes that he needs to enrich himself first before doing something for the country, is a big problem. Then we have to set up a fraud committee, and as the assessment is going on with the situation analysis, we will have to go out with our whole government to go to the offices, to the sectors. We know what is happening in that places. Today, our health sector is a problem in this country. Women are dying all the time. What is the problem? Is it the doctors? Or is it the women? Or is it our system? So we need to know all those things to be able to set up a proper agenda for our health sector. You check our agricultural system. Why are the youths not involving in agriculture? Our first 100 days will make sure we sit down and revamp, change things, because agriculture is what takes a country to the next level. So we need to bring more of technology in the ways of agriculture. You know, that's the most important thing, because today we can all say,
1 more minute, sir.
Yes, we can all say that the country is going into a direction that we don't all want. But what can we do to change that? I believe that through a thorough assessment and a thorough situation analysis, we'll be able to identify the problems of the country, and we'll be able to do things that are needed in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Fati. The next speaker is Alaji Mamadi Kuram, who is also a presidential candidate for the 2021 elections. Your 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. Haruna Drame. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for the members of the audience and fellow Gambians. I'm very pleased to be here today to present my case of why I should be elected as the president of this country and on the 4th of December 2021. In December 2016, the Gambians went to the poll and elected a president. As we stand today, 5 years later, we all know there is much to be desired. We had a coalition government that promised a lot. There was a lot that was promised to us. But so far, we could say that 90% of the promises have not been delivered to the Gambian people. So why am I putting forward myself to contest those promises? A transition government was supposed to investigate. Then came the Janet Commission to investigate the assets of the former president and account for it to the people. The results yet to be seen. There is the Constitutional Review Commission that was supposed to write a new constitution at so much cost, almost $200 million. Some would say, like me, it was not necessary to write a whole constitution because there was already a constitution. It was only a matter of needing or requiring us to reform those parts of the Constitution that were of concern to the people, like 50+1, citizenship. Those were the critical issues that Gambians were fighting for, the media laws today. So why spend so much money? Nevertheless, the money has been spent, but we're still waiting for a referendum. The president has not given us an answer as to why there is no referendum. We know the entanglements that happen between the political parties, and it boils down to one thing. They have put the party before the country. They have put the individual interest before the country. So why am I here to contest? Still on the same question. We had the Truth, Reconciliation, TRRC, the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission. Reparation. What is reparation? If you found me here, you bring down my fence, you knock it down with your car, to reparate me is to put it back to where it was. So the burning question today is, after 3 years, it was supposed to be delivered. Now it's 5 years. Where is the reparation? Another commission that has been dragged and dragged and dragged at so much cost to the taxpayer. So why am I here today? Why am I contesting for the presidency? The security sector reform was promised to the people. We said, if you want to take a general home to go and sit down, a major general, you need to give him money. But we had a coalition government that spent money where the money is not supposed to be spent. That spent almost $1 billion to $2 billion on a transition. As a result, no security sector reform, no civil service reform. So where do we stand? People ask, why don't you join other parties? Which other parties? We ask you back again. Do you want us to join the parties that put the interests of the party before the country? For what purpose would you join such parties as a patriotic citizen? In fact, the partyism is in question at the moment. Whether it is individual interest that dominates, or it is the party interest that dominates over the national interest. They have not convinced us in any way. So we still continue to ask. Now you will begin to understand why we're putting ourselves forward to contest the election. As they say, Ja'al haqqun wa zahaq al-batil wa inna al-batil kana zahuka. The time for truth, the moment for truth for this country has come. Gambians have been asking, what would we do in the first 100 days? There is people called change of government is not the same as change of system.
There's 1 more minute, sir.
Change of government not the same as change of system. There are natural systems and government and social systems. I'll borrow 2 more minutes, sir. There are natural systems.
Of course, 2 minutes will be added.
Right. There are natural systems and also social systems. We would like to do a security sector reform. We would like to come in where the transition government failed. I have served in the Janet Commission. I'm an economist and I'm an accountant. We know where the commissions fail. We know where the money is. We have to start from there. Those reports need to be looked at again. They might not be perfect reports, but you have to dilute. In economics, we said you must look at the exogenous variables and see the effect of those exogenous variables, the outside variables. Take care of them, but still cannot run away from the problem. Our health sector needs to be looked at in the first 100 days to make sure that not many women are dying at birth. We must look at the agricultural sector. Reform has to happen in all the major sectors. Housing is a problem in this country. Since Bakote, there has not been a major housing project that government have financed. Dug it just to cut the land 50 by 50, 30 by 30. It's not a housing project. The Social Security was set up 50 years or 40 years ago to give housing to teachers, civil servants, doctors, and nurses. That has not happened. That's our priority in our first 100 days. The e-government. Look at this government. Nobody can even tell you how many Gambians are there. What is your base? Where is the ID card for every citizen is supposed to be free? Why is the voter's card free and the ID card is not free? Big questions. The party before the country always put the country behind. It is time for we the Gambians to take charge of our country and make something out of this. Housing. Housing makes sense, my friends. Zulkarnain was what they call Babili Mansa. He was building and he asked for Ainuni Bikuwatin. It's in the Quran. Without the youths, you cannot build anything in this country, my friends. This country, why do I want to be president? I have taught 20,000 people in this country in Jollof tutors. I never asked a student which tribe do you belong to or which part of the country you belong to. Is Arujatun Ardun? Rajan. I will come back again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we are beginning the debate actually in earnest. Mr. Babakar Jeng, young man, putting the heart forward as well for office of the president and want to be the occupant of #1 Marina Parade come the 5th of December 2021. Your first 5 minutes, sir.
Yes, thank you for having me, Haruna. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I first of all thank the organizers for giving the Gambians the chance to scrutinize their leaders. And also I thank the co-panelists for taking this bold step, towards taking a task that is so heavy. Also I thank the audience who made it here today, regardless of whomsoever you represent. This shows that you love your country. And I also thank the journalists and all the media houses here today. I am Babukar Jeng, a husband, a son, and a member of a society, and a good citizen. Actually, my focus here, regarding my first 100 days, is based on the status quo. Because we all know that right now the world is suffering from a global crisis, that is this pandemic. And if you look at the world, it's like one big village, it's a global village. And economies around the world are affected. When you look at the United States, China, Japan, Germany, France, Italy, they account for 60% of the world's supply and demand, that's the GDP. 65% of the world's manufacturing, 41% of the world's manufacturing and export. And if these countries, their economies, they sneeze, the rest of the world catches a cold. And Gambia, looking at our current state, Gambia will suffer from fever. So actually, my first 100 days in office will be focused on a technical audit, because at the end of the day, there's a system already in place, and this technical audit, we would want to at least discover, how far, how fast, will the economy damage, and how bad will it get, and how long will the damage last, and what are the mechanisms, of the economic contagion, and above all, what can my government, do about it? So regarding economies, it's about how trade goes on in a certain country, so that livelihood can be easy. Because when you look at right now, prices, are on the high side. The healthcare system, it's completely ruined. And basic necessities of life, is at stake. So my focus, is going to be something that's going to be international. Where there is a global crusade that's going on, on how to, put, a cushion, for the world's economies, to lie on. Because at the end of the day, in times of crisis, I think what focus governments should do, is to create like response, mechanisms, whereby their countries' men will not suffer, from this global crisis that's going on around the world. So my focus mainly, because at the end of the day, getting into a system, you're not going to find, machines or systems. You're going to find human beings, and government. Yeah, government is a machinery that's ongoing. So I think my main focus, is to engage, and this technical audit will, unfold, certain, things that has to be taken care of. And it's going to be sector by sector, and each sector, will be focused on, so that the needs can arise, so that together, we can tackle these problems that, as a government, we are going through, and as a society also, we are going through. And I think basically, the time is too short, and this is a very delicate, topic. And in a nutshell, regarding reforms, I don't believe much in reforms. I believe in recovery in this day and age, because thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. We have an hour plus to debate. So we'll have 2 minutes in between us to do this. Mr. Jase, in the United States, we'll come back to you. Would you, sir, want to react to any of the speakers here today based on their submission? 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Not quite. However, I would like to add that in order to bring any meaningful economic recovery into the country, we have to look at our ports authority. The seaport is an area that's a major generator of income for the nation. But right now, it's there are certain issues that need to be reviewed, and such as the corruption, the congestion, the security, the turnaround times for vessels, the need for the expansion of the facility, the staffing, efficiency, as well as transition from the handling of cash to electronic financial transactions. I believe that once the Ports Authority it's brought up to the standard of efficiency that it actually deserves, this would begin to have a direct economic impact on the Gambia. What we have right now is that we are losing a lot of business to our neighbors in the SWAP region when it comes to discharging of goods, because we can only discharge, I think, one vessel at a time. There is need to look into the possibility of creating dry ports somewhere for the inland, where once containers are discharged that are heading for other destinations, they would move it to these dry ports and create the room and create a better turnaround time for the vessels to discharge. One of the other things that we must do for economic recovery is to look at what kind of impact COVID has on our economy, and what kind of shall I say, grants and other assistance that came in.
You want to borrow your
that was
first
supposed
2
to be
minutes?
used as to be used as an economic cushion that was actually not properly utilized by our present government. The economic recovery itself would have to take a team of specialists instead of relying on the know-how and knowledge of one individual or one party. So I do agree with my colleagues where they pointed out that there will be economic committees set up to look into this. I would actually create a presidential economic advisory group that would actually focus on the economy, made up of expert economists that can actually guide the economic transformation of the Gambia, and not depend entirely on one individual's know-how or a party's know-how. I think it has to be a collective effort by all that we have to offer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're assuming that he has taken into his first 2 minutes. Now, Mr. Kurang, would you react to any of the presentations here for 2 minutes? You agree, you disagree, is possible, is not possible, you think of anybody's presentation?
I will maybe continue with where I stopped, if you would allow me.
You still have 2 minutes.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, that's fine. The first 100 days, I think one of the things that Gambians have been calling for is declaration of assets. We've had in this country, the president is a millionaire before he became a president. And then we're suspecting that he's a multi-millionaire. But without asset declaration, I think there's a big question. We also have education sector reform, which is on the top of our agenda for Youth for Change. We call it change because these are the things that we want to see in change. In the Gambian education sector has two problems which we must address. There is an access problem, people getting to where they want to get in tertiary or other education, and also a relevance problem. So many people leave university and they cannot employ themselves, or they leave polytechnics. I think this is going to be addressed. We want people who did Arabic, right? Thousands and thousands of people in Gambia are going to madrasas. My friend, your countrymen, they go to madrasa, they finish, nothing for them to do. How can you develop when half of your population is marginalized? We will make a stop to that. That's one thing we will address. The Arabic system will be integrated into the greater education system because Arabic is just a language. Al-Lugatul Fakat. Chinese is a language. The people who build our roads don't speak English and they build the bridges. So what about the people who speak our language and they don't work at all? That's a problem. I spoke about, I've taught students in this country. This politics in this country has now become something else. People are talking about tribalism. It's a dangerous problem. It must be addressed. Singapore has addressed it. Taiwan have addressed it. Do you know, even in China, they have different languages. They all don't speak Chinese. In fact, there is no language called Chinese. They speak Mandarin. Some of them speak Cantonese. Different languages. I'll come back again. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Now, I'm jixing things up a little bit. So, Mr. Fati, you want to react to anybody's presentation? 2 minutes?
I just want to add up.
You still have 2 minutes, sir.
Yes, no problem. Like it said here, reforms, that's what every government wants. But like I said before reforms, we need assessment. Gambia, we need to digitalize things. If you look at other countries, everything turned from paper to digital. That's a very, very important issue we need to work on. Because we cannot sit down and be looking at our offices using papers to collect data. That is something that is very, 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 very dangerous. We need to digitalize. We need technology to work effectively. Like I was saying, I am a youth. I think I'm the youngest among all the political leaders. The youths need to be considered in this country. If you look at sport, sport is one of the most lucrative business right now in this country. But is the government supporting sports? We have qualified for the African Cup of Nations the first time. But even the preparations are yet to be done. Because why? They don't know the value of sports in this country. So in our first day in office, we'll try to bring all these things on board. We are not going to say that we're going to do this, we're going to do that, because 100 days is like three months, 10 days.
In fact, 2 minutes has just exhausted.
Yes, let me just add up 1 minute. You see?
No, you can borrow one of your 2 minutes.
No problem. Give me that 2 minutes.
Then go.
Yes, that 100 days in office, I think it's a little bit short term. You don't have to come up with big plans. What you have to do is analyze the situation. Look at how the country is moving. What is needed in this country? Why is this country not moving? See, you go to Guinea-Bissau. Guinea-Bissau isn't moving. Why is this country not going? If we the people are the problem, let's try to settle it down. If it is the government, let's try to sit down and know our lapses and we move on. I think that is something that we need to concentrate on. We need to research. We need to know our priorities. We need to know what is really needed for this country. I think that's a very, very important thing to do. But coming up here with big ideas, you're going to be like the 2016 coalition members. They went to office, they couldn't do anything because what proper handing over was not done. So I think this country needs a big problem. If Banjul, the capital, is the problem, let's move the capital out of Banjul to Brufut or somewhere else. I think that's something we need to do.
Thank you, Mr. Fati. Mr. Jeng, any reactions in 2 minutes to any of the presentations?
Actually, I'll be proactive here, because we have realities that we're facing. And I think we are a bit distracted from the realities of this world right now. We are in the hands of this pandemic. The world is gripped by this pandemic. And the economy of the world is highly affected by this pandemic. So I think if we have to focus our energies, it has to be on what has to be done to be able to recover from the aftermath of this pandemic, because it has come to stay. COVID-19 is not here to go, it is here to stay. So to accommodate it is very expensive, and I think it needs some level of collaboration and connection with what goes around the world right now as we speak. There are activities that are going on around the world, trying to find solutions and means, because there are no solutions yet, to be able to take care of this pandemic. Because at the end of the day, all these, giant producers around the world are hit hard, and we as a poor country in Africa will be affected more. I think looking at the first 100 days or, being in office, I think the focus here is what exactly should we start doing within our tenure in office, because you're not only there for 100 days, you are there for a period of time where the country needs you, because right now the country needs a savior. We are sinking. So I think, like I rightly mentioned in the beginning, one has to focus on exactly what can be done. We look at the sectors of this country that really brings income to this country. GRA, the Gambia Ports Authority. And I think there should be...
You want to take your first 2 minutes?
Actually, I hate boring. I don't want to take anything. So I will lay my finger on this.
Okay, then let's put the finger lay on it. I think that works. Now, we're going to go back. I owe you 4 minutes? Or it will be 6, actually. I don't think you took the first one. Mr. Jasse, one of the biggest revenue base for this country has been our groundnuts. Now, we understand aflatoxin has been a case with our groundnuts. So people are not buying our groundnuts, they don't appreciate it. We know the tourism sector is also a big revenue earner for this country. That also, because of COVID-19, as Mr. Jeng has alluded to earlier, has affected it. In your first 100 days, what would you do for the Gambian farmer and the operator in the tourism industry to bring about meaningful change to not just the economy, but put a few dollars in their pockets?
First of all, we have to face reality that the Gambia has relied on agriculture for over 56 years, and we clearly have not succeeded in that sector. Many projects have come and failed, the Nari, the Jahali Pasha, and so on and so forth. I think the time has come for the Gambia to shift, do a paradigm shift. We shift from agriculture to entrepreneurship. You see, I think we need to encourage our local content by giving opportunity through tax breaks and other incentives to the local owned companies, such as TAF Construction, such as people like Mohamed Jah, people like Alpha Barry, the Idrissa Jobs, and so on and so forth. We can't continue this road of trying to produce groundnuts because it's not going to solve our problems. We have to start looking at how best we can shift some of these people who grow groundnuts into something else, like cashew nuts. Cashew nuts are a much better cash crop than groundnuts are. In the United States here, there are single farms that produce more groundnuts than Gambia and Senegal roll into one. So what's the point in fighting this groundnut thing when we know for 56 years it has failed? I would look at a paradigm shift. I would shift our national focus to producing entrepreneurs within the Gambia, especially within the tourism sector, in hotel ownership, restaurants,
Thank you, sir.
Other areas that support the tourism sector. And also come up with tax incentives that would encourage not kill these local businesses.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, I think you made a point that we need to have the debate on. Mr. Kuran, do you agree that groundnut should not be the dependable product for the Gambia, that we need to now diversify, and to what Mr. Jasseh is saying, go maybe to cashew growing instead of groundnuts? Do you agree, yes or no, and your defense?
I think he did mention agriculture for me is still central to the economy and the future of the Gambia because of the nature of the country. I think the problem of agriculture is there is this report, an international report called the paradox of water in the Gambia, that a country with so much water is still having a problem of drinking water. So they may fee, Ibo town, nga gas tuti rek, lan mo re ñew, ndox, Banjul, Makati, everywhere there is water. River Gambia is so abundant. There is a problem of water, and the problem of water is a problem of investment. And that transcends over all of the agricultural sector. So the farmers...
Forget the groundnut and go into something, yes, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, you see, groundnut in the Gambia, don't want to vigile. You understand?
Yes.
Most of the time, people producing groundnut now for domestic consumption.
But if the aflatoxin is there, it still affects the domoda eaters.
Yeah, I mean, yes, the medical reasons are there, and I don't think that will phase out it, but groundnut still can be made into so many forms. It can be processed. You find groundnut on the supermarket.
So we continue with our groundnuts.
You've been in England. You know how much peanut sells for in London on the supermarket. So I am not completely in for eradication of the peanut. I am in for, yes, I would agree with Mr. Jasseh, that diversification is important, not only in agriculture or food production, but also in animal husbandry. It is very important. But what I'm trying to say, there is a genetic problem, a generic problem. And that generic problem is the problem of investment, water, and investment for the farmers.
All right, we'll come back to you on investment potentials of the country.
Thank you.
Mr. J, you started talking about the pandemic. Growth for this country was going. 2019, we were up there. 2020, it starts to come down. What will you do in your first 100 days, bearing in mind COVID-19, but bring about economic prosperity?
Actually, in every situation, you know, you need an approach to the problem. And I think there should be prognosis first before diagnosis. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I will do a technical audit. Something is wrong somewhere. Once that is detected, all we do is devise our plans and connect with the international world, because there is a global crusade, you know, to resuscitate the economic situation right now, because it has drowned, you know. So like I mentioned in my first 100 days, because it's not something that I believe in, but I will have to succumb to it. In my first 100 days, I will make sure I will have an economic reform summit, you know, and in this reform...
What would that summit entail? Who will be there?
Actually, I will tap into the international world. Right now, there is the OECD. You know, they are doing a lot, you know, regarding the COVID-19, you know, and globally, you know, the UNDP, you know, and other sectors.
Well, in 2017, 2018, we did a major investment drive with the EU. We were promised 1 billion euros. Where's that money? Is the money here or not? And what difference would yours bring?
Actually, doing a technical audit, you know, when we do monetary audit, you might end up catching thieves. And when you do a technical audit, you might identify incompetence.
Are you saying corruption is a problem in the Gambia?
Actually, corruption is one thing, but incompetence also is something that's really, really affecting us. So
okay. We'll come back to you. You spent more than 2 minutes for a reason, but we'll give everybody equal opportunity to do that. Kitabu, you said you are the youngest person running for the office of the President of the Gambia.
Yes.
And that being the case, there is a discussion now between two elements. Remittances, meaning monies that are incoming into the Gambia, and we are so dependent on them now, and the back way.
Yes.
People are saying the back way boys, when they finally reach to Europe, they're sending so much money. It's also contributing to the economy.
Yeah.
So your first 100 days, are you going to say no to the back way boys, and how will you run your economy?
Mr. Drame, my first 100 days, like I said before, I don't think the concentration should be on the first 100 days. You need to think of the government generally. But looking at the affairs of the youth, like I said, I'm a youth. Leaving this country to travel out is something that we need to look at, because it's not a good sign, and it's not something that is very, very good for our country.
So you will stop the back way?
Yes, I will stop, because if every country needs its productive citizens, and it's very, very important for we to, you know, sit with the youth. We need to know their problem. We need to know what is going on. Why are they leaving the country? That's why our first 100 days is still will be based on situation analysis. We need to know what is the problem. If it is the system, let's try to sit down and arrange things and make sure what will work for the country be something that we look at. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Jasseh, we're coming back to you in the U.S., and one thing that we don't lack in this country is all of these ideas. We've had economic summit. We've had, we're going to do a prognosis before we do a diagnose and before we do the curing. We've had all of these beautiful ideas, not different from what we had in 2017. All the commissions were set up. The Gambians are promised big things, but you politicians don't deliver. Why should we trust Tamsir Jasseh?
Thank you very much, Mr. Drame. If you look at myself and my three colleagues, none of us resembles Adama Barrow. That by itself is a start for change. When you blame incoming politicians for the fault of those that were there before, you are doing wrong. What you do is you hold the system accountable. You make sure that politicians that come into office do what they say they're supposed to do. If, for instance, they say they're going to stay for 5 years, let them stay for 5 years. If it is 3 years, and that even though it's not in the Constitution, it is the character that matters, the character of the individual. I read somewhere in an Islamic literature book that says that we spend so much time paying attention in the academic qualifications and no time whatsoever on the character of the individual. It's about time we start putting character into the equation, because it is people of good character that keep their word that would decide to govern in the manner in which the people expect to be governed. Politicians will come and go, and they will always be there. We cannot do without them. It is the duty of the Gambian people, or any people whatsoever, to make sure that they have the right people and hold them accountable. And when they do what they're supposed to do, they stay in office for the term that they're supposed to do. And when they don't, they don't. Another thing I would like to point out here is that I was under the impression that we are supposed to talk about what we do in 100 days. A lot of what was said cannot possibly happen in 100 days. So as a police officer, I always like to stick with the law. I always like to stick with the rules. So that's why I'm sticking myself to the 100-day period and not talk about anything outside of those 100 days. So let me make this clear to the Gambian people. And if I need to borrow time, please let me know, because I intend to finish this statement. My intention.
We owe you 4 minutes. You can take the first 2. You can take the second 2 minutes.
Okay. My intention is this. Everything in the Gambia right now is in shambles. We must have an assessment of the situation of every sector, and only professionals in that sector would do it, not politicians. So I, as a politician, I will ensure that for each sector, there is a team of qualified personnel made up of purely Gambians who would look at the sector, analyze it, come up with solutions, short-term, long-term, and then a collection of all this will be presented to the Gambian people as our way forward. That way, everyone would be on the same page. But a lot of what was said so far cannot possibly happen in 6 months, let alone 3 months. And if I may also suggest that next time we have a debate to talk about economic policies, you're going to need a lot more than 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. We will bear that in mind. We're coming back to you, Mr. Kuran, now. I've had a couple of suggestions from some people that are familiar with economy and all of these reforms to help me guide some of the questioning. Of course, we know the media are here. If we organize ourselves, we'll also do a question and answer session with the media to ask you guys directly. I would, if we are all agreeable to this, none of you have a party structure. So that means media engagement is going to be your biggest tool. So if you will agree, we'll extend this a bit so people will interact with you intimately and get to understand your plans and your activities, because you may not be able to have the opportunity that the parties have to do rallies all over the country, etc. Only if you agree. So we'll stretch it a little bit so the media also can really have that interaction with you and ask all the questions now that we have the attention of the country focused on you, which I think will be a great thing to do. But having said that, I've had some help. I'm not going to name names because somebody may kill me for not giving me permission to do that. So, the debt burden on the country is really high, Mr. Kuran. Gambia owes a lot of money, and the servicing of debt itself is what's really frustrating our country. What will you do to manage what we have to pay and also what we have to nyam-nyam?
What should we do? Good question. Well, thank you very much. I run on the platform for Youth for Change, and I can tell you we have a very good structure, better than so many one-man parties in this country. So, Mr. Drame, the question is very important because debt is a critical issue. Between 1965 and 2016, two presidents, Jawara and Yaya Jammeh, borrowed $1 billion. $50 billion. Now, that is not a problem. You know what's the problem? Between 2016 and 2021, if you vote Adama Barrow in, he is already on his way, on a fast track, in a bus, about to borrow $1 billion. That underlines the seriousness of debt. The coalition government is about to borrow $1 billion. Serious problem. What's the problem of debt? There is what is called in economics the crowding out effect. If you borrow money through the central bank, internally and outside, there is interest that is put on it. That interest is a burden for the government. We have to pay it. We, the taxpayers, have to pay it. They have in the provinces. I'm just coming from the provinces today. If you time to pay Nyatanko, they will come and sell your golo, and you pay your sareto, and you pay. Serious problem. So the taxpayer is on the burden. The crowding out effect is that when the government borrows, the government is always given priority. It takes all the money from the commercial banks into the central bank to finance government expenditure. The businessman, I'm a businessman. I'm an entrepreneur in education. The businessman cannot borrow. You're going to borrow. The bank is asking you for 20%. Who in this room can borrow money at 20%, go outside Serakunda market and make money? That is why so many businesses in Gambia who borrow from banks are going bust. Why? Because government is spending and borrowing. Why? Because the president is spending and spending and spending. So the problem of debt is about debt management. How do you manage debt? The first thing you do with debt management is reduce your discretionary expenditure. Why do you have to travel with 100 vehicles, fuel, V8 they call them, isn't it? V8. That is a lot of money for the people. So many discretionary expenses must be cut down. There is no magic, my friends. If your government is spending and we are clapping and eating benachin, there will be more debt. Some of those debts will be paid in 50 years' time. Your great-grandchildren will pay them. So spend less. Second problem, there is an expenditure side I talked about just now. I will borrow 2 more minutes. Okay. There is an expenditure side. There is also the income side. What is coming in? That has to be managed also, so that government will receive what it is supposed to receive. Now that comes back to what people call systems change. There has been no system change. Most people, you ask them what is systems change, they still take you back to the same question. Munam system change, inko system change, munam system change, inko system change. No. There are 2 kinds of system. I started at the beginning of my speech. There is a natural systems, like your digestive system, your respiratory system, they are natural. The solar system is natural. They're from God. It is described in the Quran. You cannot change them. But social and economic systems are flexible. They are not perfect. So we don't want parties to come here and tell us our solution is socialism. It is outdated. It will never come back in the main stage in this world. It is not. The solution is entrepreneurship and investment in our people. Youth for Change is saying that invest in the youth. I've been in education for 20 years. We said, we call for a government to mobilize 500,000 youths of this country and give them jobs and give them proper education. That way we can change this country and earn revenue. Thank you.
If a teacher becomes a politician, my goodness, we know what that means. Now, Mr. Fatih Kitabu, 83.1% of our GDP in 2020 is public debt. 83.1. Each $1, 83.1 butut mujuloled. How will you manage that if you become president?
Like I said earlier, that, like Mr. Kura said, is a problem in this country. Since the previous government till now, we are just seeing debt all the time. And what are we doing to make sure we subsequently help the country recover from that? I think that cannot be said in the first 100 days. But we need to invest. Because we haven't grants outside, but are we investing that money? We are not.